July the 7th, 2005, it changed my life completely. It changed my life full circle. It was a normal day for me. I was on my way to work. I remember getting ready, rushing out, not having my breakfast, getting to my local tube station. So I got to Turnpike Lane tube station in North London on the Piccadilly line. And I ran down the escalator and I got to the platform. And before that day, every single day, so since leaving uni and working in the city, I would make sure I would sit on the first carriage of the Piccadilly line out of North London. That day, I don't know what it was, I didn't get onto that first carriage. My body didn't turn to want to go and get on to the carriage. And on the first carriage, I just got onto another carriage. So the tube made its journey and I was just thinking, oh, hurry up, I'm late. How am I going to explain this to my boss? But it made its journey and it got to King's Cross and it was 10 seconds into the tunnel towards Russell Square when there was a massive bang. It was the loudest bang or noise I've ever heard. That it was deafening, literally. Ears popped, train shook, came to a standstill. Lights went out. I remember, even though it's 14 years on, I remember people who were stood up had fallen. People had come out of their chairs. There was then the emergency lighting that came on, but it was really dark. Smoke started to fill up the carriages through the ventilation system and the smoke was thick and black. I then started to hear screams and people crying and I saw people injured. I was still. I had remained still. I didn't know what had happened. I didn't know what was going on. And all I could see was that people were panicking, people were frightened, people were banging on the doors, people were trying to break the glass to get out. No one was telling us anything. Nothing was coming through the announcement system or the tannoy system. And I know now, 14 years on, that actually I had gone into a state of shock and panic. That's why I remained still. I didn't move. I remember hearing people asking me, are you okay? I didn't respond. But I did look around and I could see that people were scared and people were frightened. And people were trying to help those who were injured. My thought was that it's rush hour morning, this packed tube, we've derailed, the next tube is going to leave King's Cross a minute later, doesn't know we've derailed and is going to hit us and there's going to be a massive fire and explosion. And then my thought process went on to, you're going to die. And we are going to die in this today. And that's why I genuinely thought July the 7th, 2005 would be the day that I die. I remember just keeping still and thought process was then thinking about family and loved ones and not saying bye and not got married, not traveled, not had kids, not seen the world. Literally preparing myself for death because I thought we're going to die. The 45 minutes down there felt like a lifetime. I know when people say that phrase, I know how it feels. I've often described it as this noose, this rope being around my heart and it was just being tightened and tightened and I couldn't breathe. That was the feeling I had. The smoke was so thick and filled up the carriages so bad that I remember taking off my blazer. So I was wearing a suit and I took my blazer off and literally covered it around my face and other people were doing the same because it was choking us and it was choking me. I remember to this day now actually, after about 45 to 50 minutes, this one distant voice coming through the carriages, and it was this man's voice, and he was shouting, "It's police, we're coming to get you." It was at that point when I heard his voice that I thought, there's probably a way out of this today. The police started to come through the carriages with the emergency services, getting us out of the carriages, taking us back to King's Cross, coming out to air. And I remember seeing people injured, even coming out. But actually what was eerie as well was King's Cross was completely shut down. So when we were brought through the tunnel, King's Cross, I remember being picked up by one of the tube workers onto the platform, and we were being escorted out. And I've never seen this, and I hope I never see it again, but the whole of King's Cross was empty. No one in there. It was eerie. Coming out of King's Cross at ground level, and I remember I just wanted to be alone. I was still in my state of shock and panic, and I remember just running right out, passing the police, passing the other passengers, and running across the road straight into the McDonald's, and just going into the toilets and breaking down there, breaking down and wanting to just be alone. So I tried to call, just taking it back, I tried to call my loved ones. I couldn't get through. It was hours that I couldn't get through. And then I just wanted to go somewhere safe. So I wanted to go back home. And I remember the emergency services and the transport workers were saying, there's no transport. There is nothing leaving King's Cross. So wherever you need to go on foot. And that's exactly what I did. I walked home from King's Cross all the way back to North London. It took me hours, but I remember when I got onto my road, I remember just running down my street, opening the door to my house, locking it. So it's daytime, broad daylight, daytime, shutting the door, locking it, shutting the curtains, sitting in the dark and curling up on the sofa, waiting for my loved ones to come. That's where I felt secure. Now when I look back, that's where I was secure, in my home. I had to seek my own support. So I had to basically find my own counselling, pay for my own counselling, which was unfortunate that I had to do that, because I had, like myself, which was unfortunate that I had to do that because I'd gone through that experience. I'd wanted people to reach out. I'd wanted them to support me in some way, but that didn't happen. If I'm truly honest, it didn't happen. And so I had to seek my own support. I mean, my best support was my family. If it wasn't for them, if it wasn't for my mum, if it wasn't for my boyfriend at that time, I don't know what could have happened, because I know there have been many survivors who, for them, they haven't been able to cope with the situation. And I dread to think, I don't want to think about things like that, but I know that their support really helped me through. Having their love, it was having their understanding, it was trying to get me back to my day-to-day routine. So, for instance, I had to take a long while off work, but I couldn't even do the simple things like leave the house and go to the shops without having someone with me, which meant it impacted their life, because I needed, at that time, I wanted my loved one or loved ones around me. I didn't want to be left alone. And they gave that to me, and they understood, and there was a lot of talking, and there was a lot of emotion. Had I not had it, it would have been very, very difficult. It was a long while before I gained my own independence. But if I'm honest, 14 years on, I still find things difficult. So for instance, traveling on the tube, I rarely do it. But when I do get on the tube, I have to get onto that Piccadilly line, and it brings it all back to me. And sitting here with you, talking to you today, we're approaching the anniversary. So it's hard, and I know it will get harder. as we come to July the 7th, because actually year on year, my husband, my then boyfriend, says to me, you had nightmares, you were screaming in your sleep, you were saying things about 7/7. And so even though it's 14 years on, it still affects me. And if I'm truly honest, it will affect me, and I will remember it for the rest of my life. It's not something I can forget. It's not something you can forget. Going through such an experience and seeing what I saw and hearing those screams and going through that experience, I will never forget it. The first time I decided to get back onto public transport was very hard. It's not as if I said, okay, right, I'm going to get back onto the tube, and it happened. I walked down the steps onto the platform and got on the tube. No. It was a staged process. So I even had to get myself to the tube station, which was very difficult. That thought of knowing that I've got to get on that tube really made me panic. So I had to overcome it step by step by step. Get myself to the tube station, get up, down to the platform, get onto the tube, sit for one stop, come off, and try and then elongate the journey. But that took, if I'm honest, that took a long while. That took a long while. And like I said, even to this day, I try and keep myself away from the tubes. I travel on them if I have to travel on them, otherwise I'll drive. Because of the fact that it brings back a lot of bad memories, and I've said this to so many people. I mean, it's etched in my mind so much that I bet if those people who were in my carriage walked past me today, I would be able to recognize them.